Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into some really quite startling news coming out of Brazil today. Former President Jair Bolsonaro has just been ordered under house arrest by the Supreme Court. It's moving fast. We've been digging into a detailed AP News piece to get you all the key details, what happened, the legal side of things, and, well, the reactions, which are pretty intense, both in Brazil and internationally.
That's right. And look, our goal here isn't just to read you the headline. We want to really pull apart the specifics. What are the actual charges? Why house arrest and why now? And what does this mean politically, internationally? It's a complex web. By the end of this, you should have a really clear, solid understanding of this major development and, what it might signal for Brazil's path forward.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Monday, Brazil's Supreme Court orders former President Jair Bolsonaro to house arrest. That's huge news.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And the core reason, the official reason given by Justice Alexandre de Moraes, is that Bolsonaro violated precautionary measures. These were measures already imposed on him.
Right.
So these aren't just like friendly suggestions. They're serious court orders. Things like maybe limits on public statements, travel bans, perhaps meant to stop any more alleged interference with ongoing legal stuff. It's crucial to get this. It wasn't a new conviction. It was an escalation because the court felt he crossed a line that was already drawn.
Okay, so what was the specific trigger? What exactly did he do that made the court say, right, house arrest?
Well, the thing that seems to have really pushed it over the edge happened just this past Sunday, August 3rd. Bolsonaro addressed supporters at a protest down in Rio de Janeiro. And the way he did it was he transmitted his message using his son's cell phone. One of his sons was a lawmaker.
And what did he actually say?
His words were reported as, "Good afternoon, Copacabana. Good afternoon, my Brazil. A hug to everyone. This is for our freedom." Pretty standard rally talk on the surface, maybe.
Yeah, seems like it. So how did Justice de Moraes read that? Why was that the final straw?
Well, Justice de Moraes saw it very differently. He called it a flagrant disrespect to the precautionary measures. Plain and simple. And there's more, apparently. Bolsonaro's son, Senator Flavio Bolsonaro, took the post down from Instagram pretty quickly afterwards. Justice de Moraes pointed to that, suggesting it was basically an attempt to hide the legal transgression, like they knew it was pushing the boundaries.
Okay, the removal makes it look worse.
Exactly. But de Moraes' concerns went quite a bit deeper than just that one message. He stated Bolsonaro had been spreading messages with, and I'm quoting here, a clear content of encouragement and instigation to attacks against the Supreme Court, and a blatant support for foreign intervention in the Brazilian judiciary.
Wow. So accusing him of trying to stir up attacks on the court and even inviting foreign interference?
Precisely. He specifically mentioned Bolsonaro addressing the protesters in Copacabana to try to coerce the Supreme Court.
That definitely changes the context from just violating a rule. Okay, so what does house arrest actually look like for him now? What are the rules?
They're pretty strict. He has to stay in Brasilia, no travel allowed, only family members and his lawyers can visit him. And they seized all mobile phones from his house. Plus, he has to keep wearing that electronic ankle bracelet that was already part of an earlier court order.
So his lawyers immediately said they'd appeal, right? Arguing his words weren't criminal. How does that usually play out in Brazil? Is it a fine line between free speech and defying the court?
That's a really key point.
Yeah.
Yes, his lawyers are definitely appealing. They're framing it as, his words cannot be regarded as ignoring precautionary measures or as a criminal act. Basically a freedom of expression argument.
Makes sense.
But the court, especially Justice Moraes, seems to view it very clearly. Not as protected speech in this specific context, but as a deliberate act of defiance. An act aimed at undermining the court's authority given the existing orders against him. So less about general free speech, more about violating a specific judicial order.
Right. The context of the existing restrictions is key.
Exactly.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, this house arrest isn't happening in a vacuum, is it? It's part of much larger ongoing legal troubles for him.
Absolutely. You really have to see it in that context. Remember, Bolsonaro is actually on trial. The accusation is that he masterminded a coup plot. A plot to stay in power even after he lost the 2022 election. So this house arrest is just one development in that much larger, very serious narrative.
And the accusations in that case are incredibly serious.
Oh, yes. Brazilian prosecutors are accusing him of heading a criminal organization, an organization they allege plotted to overturn the election results. And really chillingly, they even included alleged plans to assassinate President Lula and Justice de Moraes himself.
Just staggering charges. And as you mentioned earlier, orders, this isn't completely out of the blue for you if you've been following this. The legal pressure has been ramping up.
That's right. It was just last month, wasn't it? The top court had already ordered him to wear the electronic ankle monitor and put him under a curfew, so steps were already being taken.
Okay, so given all this drama, these serious charges, the house arrest, how is the rest of the world reacting, particularly given Bolsonaro's international profile?
Well, the reaction from the Trump administration in the U.S. has been very strong, very vocal. President Trump directly tied a new 50% tariff on Brazilian goods to Bolsonaro's legal situation.
Right.
He explicitly called the court proceedings a witch hunt.
Wow, linking trade policy directly to another country's judicial process? That's bold.
It is. And the State Department's Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs doubled down on X, formerly Twitter. They put out a statement condemning de Moraes' order, said they'd hold accountable all those aiding and abetting sanctioned conduct.
Yeah.
And they went so far as to call Justice de Moraes a U.S.-sanctioned human rights abuser, accusing him of using institutions to silence opposition and threaten democracy. Their message was blunt. Let Bolsonaro speak.
That is remarkably strong language directed at a judge in a sovereign nation.
Extremely strong.
And quite a contrast, then, with the official stance from the Brazilian government itself.
Complete contrast. The Lula administration has said nothing. Officially, they haven't commented on the case at all.
Interesting. Okay, what about inside Brazil? How are political figures reacting? I imagine it's pretty divided.
Oh, absolutely polarized. Yeah. Bolsonaro's son, Senator Flávio Bolsonaro, went on X and claimed Brazil is officially in a dictatorship. He called it persecution by de Moraes. Predictable, perhaps.
Right.
Then you have Nicolas Ferreira, a right-wing lawmaker, also criticizing de Moraes. He questioned arresting someone over, as he put it, social media use, calling the reason pathetic.
Okay, so criticism from the right. What about the left?
On the other side, you have someone like Duda Salabert, a leftist lawmaker. She stated that Bolsonaro's house arrest actually boosts Brazil's democracy. Her take was that those who attacked it are about to pay. So a sense of accountability, of justice being served from that perspective.
Totally opposing views, as expected. Now, this whole situation feels so dramatic, almost unprecedented. But you mentioned earlier, maybe it isn't entirely unique in Brazil's recent history. How does this fit?
That's a really important perspective to bring in. Bolsonaro is definitely not the first former Brazilian president to face arrest since the military dictatorship ended back in 1985.
Right. Who else?
Well, there's Lula himself, the current president. He was actually imprisoned between 2018 and 2019 on corruption charges. Those charges were later thrown out by the Supreme Court, but he did serve time.
Okay.
Then there was Michel Temer. He was arrested briefly in 2019 as part of a graft investigation, though that didn't lead to a conviction. And Fernando Collor, he was impeached way back and then later convicted for money laundering and corruption. He's actually serving an 8-year sentence right now.
So there's quite a history there. What does that pattern tell us?
I think what it really shows is how Brazil's judiciary has become increasingly powerful and crucially independent since 1985. These democratic institutions seem, quite robust now. They're clearly willing and able to hold even the most powerful figures, former presidents, accountable. It's actually quite significant compared to many other countries.
That's a really interesting takeaway, the strength of the institutions themselves. Now, we saw a quote from a political analyst, Criomar de Souza. What did he see as the implications looking forward?
Yeah, de Souza's take was that this house arrest opens a new moment for the country's opposition. He basically suggested the run-up to the 2026 election is going to be, well, his word was turmoil.
And we should probably remind everyone, Bolsonaro is already barred from running in that 2026 election, right? That was a separate ruling.
That's correct. The top electoral court already ruled him ineligible due to abuse of power in a previous case. So this house arrest adds another layer, but he was already out of the next race.
So what kind of turmoil did de Souza predict?
He pointed to two main struggles dominating Brazilian politics now. First, the effort by Bolsonaro's supporters to maintain their strength on the right, whether that means, pushing for amnesty for him in Congress or literally protesting in the streets, keeping that base energized.
Okay, struggle number one.
And the second struggle he sees is how the current Lula administration will try to project stability, to show that despite all this noise, the country has a government that's functioning. His conclusion was pretty stark. You just said, this is just a start.
A lot to process. We've covered the immediate house arrest order, the really serious underlying accusations, the very different reactions internationally and domestically, and put it into some historical context. So you should now have a much clearer picture of this whole complex situation surrounding Jair Bolsonaro.
Yeah, and it leaves us and you with a really important question to think about, doesn't it? When you see these repeated legal actions against major political figures in Brazil, Lula, Temer, Collor, now Bolsonaro, what does it signal about the health and the independence of Brazil's democratic institutions? And maybe more immediately, how could this specific situation, this house arrest, reshape the political landscape as Brazil heads towards that potentially turbulent 2026 election? Something to definitely keep an eye on.